Have you ever found yourself in the middle of a conversation looking at the person across from you and realizing that even though you were speaking the exact same language,
Right. Using the exact same vocabulary.
exactly the same vocabulary, but you are somehow completely and entirely misunderstanding each other?
Oh, absolutely. It's very common.
Yeah, like you're nodding, they're nodding, but the reality inside your head is just miles apart from the reality in theirs.
It's an incredibly frustrating feeling.
It really is almost, isolating. Well, today's deep dive is going to explore the mechanics behind that exact feeling.
We're going to get into some really fascinating territory today.
Yeah, we are. We're going to look at why our relentless quest for total unity often backfires, revealing our deepest differences instead, and ultimately leading to social isolation.
Which is incredibly relevant right now.
Totally. And believe it or not, the blueprint for this modern communication breakdown, it traces all the way back to one of the oldest narratives in human history.
The Tower of Babel.
The Tower of Babel. So where are we pulling this from?
So the framework we are using to dissect this comes from a remarkably insightful paper. It was published in June 2026.
Okay.
The author is one Nate, and they titled the work, Why Babel Didn't Build a Tower.
Why Babel didn't build a tower. I mean, that title alone signals a massive departure from the way we usually think about this story.
It really does. It fundamentally changes the entire premise.
Right. Because our mission today for this deep dive is not to analyze the architectural failure of a massive physical building.
No, we're not talking about structural engineering here.
Exactly. We are putting aside the ancient bricks, the mortar, those Sunday school illustrations of a big zigzag tower.
We're leaving all of that behind.
Right. We are going to analyze the profound relationship between language and the tower's failure.
And to really understand that relationship, we first have to grasp the underlying mechanics of how the author actually reads these ancient texts.
Because it's a very specific lens, right?
It is, yeah. Nate introduces this very specific way of viewing transgression and punishment in this literary universe.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Well, before we even step foot in Babel, the author asks us to look at previous analytical work done on a different story, the story of Adam and Eve.
Which honestly, I found this section of the paper really surprising.
How so?
Well, because the traditional reading of divine punishment in these stories is usually pretty straightforward. Somebody breaks a rule and a booming voice from the sky hands down a curse.
Right, a lightning bolt drops.
Exactly, or a flood happens. But the author argues that's a complete misreading of how this universe operates.
Yeah, the author argues for a principle of necessity.
Necessity.
Right. In these foundational texts, God doesn't act from arbitrary anger or a desire for retaliation.
So it's not a temper tantrum.
No, not at all. The punishment is always intrinsically linked to the transgression. It's organic.
Okay, so how does that work with Adam and Eve?
Let's look at how the paper breaks it down. The analysis interprets the core elements of that story. So, the snake and the consumption of the fruit as symbolic representations
Symbolic of what?
of the reproductive organ and the act of physical intimacy.
Oh, wow. Okay, so the transgression in that specific reading isn't just about eating a forbidden piece of food.
No, it's about initiating physical intimacy.
Okay, so following that logic.
Following that logic, intimacy naturally and biologically leads to pregnancy.
Right, obviously.
Therefore, the subsequent punishment associated with the story, which is the pains of childbirth, it's not a random vindictive curse thrown down from heaven.
Just because they broke a dietary rule.
Exactly. It is the direct, unavoidable consequence of the action they took.
I see.
The punishment meets the transgression, because the punishment is simply the end result of the transgression itself.
It's basically just cause and effect.
That's exactly what it is.
It's like if I eat a massive bowl of raw cookie dough, the punishment isn't the universe getting angry at my lack of self-control.
No, the punishment is just the biological necessity of stomachache.
Right. The consequence is baked entirely into the action. I get it.
Yeah, and the author establishes this strict rule of cause and effect to prepare us for the events of Babel.
Okay.
We have to enter the Babel narrative, understanding that whatever happens to the builders, it must be the natural, logical outcome of whatever it was they were actually doing.
And this is where the traditional story completely falls apart for me based on that logic.
Oh, totally.
Because according to the text, the protagonists want to construct a sacred beacon bridging the gap between earth and the heaven.
Right. They want to reach a higher status.
Yeah. They want to force themselves into the company of the gods. But if God acts purely from necessity and the punishment naturally fits the crime, a literal lightning bolt striking a brick tower makes zero sense.
Right, because what would the natural punishment for building a physical tower be?
Gravity. I mean, if you build a physical structure that is too tall or, structurally unsound, the natural consequence is that it collapses under its own weight.
The foundation cracks.
Exactly. The wind blows it over. But the paper points out that the punishment they receive in the story doesn't look anything like gravity.
No, it doesn't. The author specifically notes that the builder's failure looks like they were hit from the flank.
From the flank, like from the side.
Yeah, rather than being frontally faced by God. They
Yeah.
weren't expecting the angle of the resistance they met.
It felt like a surprise attack.
Exactly. They woke up one day and suddenly realized they simply couldn't finish their work.
Which raises a massive red flag.
Oh, a huge one.
If the punishment felt like a flank attack rather than a frontal assault on physical engineering, we have to ask, what exactly were they building?
And this brings us to the core revelation of one Nate's paper.
This is the big one.
It is. The physical nature of the tower is a misconception. The visual of people stacking bricks to reach the clouds, that has been lost in translation over centuries.
So they weren't building with mortar.
No, they were attempting to unite humanity under one single language by defining a common sacred dictionary.
A common sacred dictionary. The Tower of Babel was a tower of words.
Exactly. They were trying to construct an indestructible structure of shared meaning.
That's fascinating.
To the builders, this dictionary was the ultimate tool. They believed that if they could capture the exact divine building blocks of language.
Like if they could perfectly name and define every single aspect of reality.
Right. They believed they would wield enough power to rule the world and storm the heavenly realms. Total linguistic unity was their strategy for ultimate dominance.
I want to ground this for a second because framing it as a sacred dictionary instantly strips away the mythic distance of the story.
It makes it very modern.
Very modern. It stops being an ancient fable and becomes this dynamic we see playing out constantly in our modern lives.
Give me an example.
Well, think about a massive corporate merger.
Okay, yeah.
Two huge companies come together, and the new executive board announces, we're going to have one unified corporate culture.
Oh, I've been in those meetings.
Right. We are going to write a single universal mission statement that defines our shared values.
This nightmare.
Or think about like an internet forum trying to draft a universal set of community guidelines.
The ambition is identical.
It really is.
A governing body decides that absolute unity is required for the project to succeed, and they assume they can achieve that unity by standardizing the language.
But anyone who has ever sat in one of those meetings knows the absolute chaos that follows.
It never works out the way they plan.
Never. The exact moment you try to write down the ultimate rules, the moment you say, here is our universal standard for what respect means or, what fairness means, the project just grinds to a halt.
Yep.
You put 10 reasonable people in a boardroom to define a core value, and you instantly get 12 fiercely defended, completely different definitions.
And that boardroom friction, that is the exact mechanism of the flank attack the author describes at Babel.
Oh, wow.
The inhabitants stopped everything else to focus on uniting under this one language. They gathered to codify their common sacred dictionary.
Okay.
But the moment they sat down and someone proposed, this is the sacred, unalterable word for justice, another person inevitably responded, I fundamentally disagree with your definition of that word.
Right. My experience of justice looks like this.
Exactly. The project didn't fail because the heavens opened up and zapped their dictionary.
Your lightning bolts.
No lightning bolts. It failed because of the sheer impossibility of human consensus.
So the very thing that brought them together.
The self-same reason that made them meet in the first place, this grand, arrogant desire to unite and build a perfect linguistic structure, that was the very thing that exposed the absolute frailty of their position.
That is such a profound, tragic irony.
It is. The author highlights this beautifully. As they tried to agree on the sacred building blocks of language, they were doomed to meet face-to-face with their unspoken separation.
Doomed to meet face-to-face with their unspoken separation.
It's a powerful phrase.
I really want to pause on that phrase. It implies the separation wasn't a punishment inflicted on them.
No, it wasn't.
The separation was already there. It was living beneath the surface. They just weren't forced to look at it until they tried to define it.
Exactly. They believed they were a unified people. But the illusion of their unity only survived as long as their communication remained somewhat vague.
Right, as long as it allowed for individual interpretation.
Yes. The moment they demanded absolute precision, the moment they tried to build the semantic tower all the way up to heaven, they discovered the foundational cracks in their shared reality.
I'm thinking about how heavily this applies to us right now.
Oh, it's everywhere today.
If you are listening to this, think about the communication tools at your disposal. We have instantaneous global messaging, ubiquitous translation software.
The entire internet basically functioning as a massive attempt at a global town square.
Exactly. We are constantly pushing for this ideal of a global village, an absolute unity where everyone is quite literally on the same page.
But the logic of this paper suggests that demanding that kind of absolute unity is actually what drives us apart.
Right. Like, does trying to force everyone onto the exact same wavelength simply force us to confront our profound, irreconcilable differences?
The paper's internal logic points to a resounding yes.
Wow.
When society pushes for total linguistic or ideological conformity, we are essentially acting as the builders of a modern Babel.
That's a scary thought.
We are demanding that millions of people use the exact same words with the exact same rigid definitions to describe their vastly different lived experiences.
But human experience isn't uniform.
Not at all. Your internal dictionary is shaped by your unique life,
Right.
your specific cultural background, your personal traumas, and your individual joys. It is inevitably going to differ from mine.
Even if you and I both speak fluently in English, our internal realities distort the vocabulary.
Give me an example.
Well, my internal definition of a word like success might involve quiet stability, while your internal definition might involve public recognition.
Sure.
If we just casually chat about wanting success, we feel united.
We're nodding along.
Exactly. But the second we try to draft a binding contract defining what success means for both of us, we are going to start arguing.
Yes, and when a society, or even a relationship between two individuals, demands absolute alignment on the meaning of every concept, it forces all of those underlying unspoken separations out into the open.
Instead of fostering harmony,
The demand for precision manufactures conflict.
it's the flank attack.
Exactly. The text points out that the ancient project of a sacred language, which was intended to elevate humanity to the level of the gods, it achieved the exact opposite.
Held up a mirror.
It held up a mirror and showed them just how deeply, fundamentally separated they were from one another.
And the consequence of looking into that mirror was catastrophic for the community.
It was devastating.
The author notes that they didn't just sigh, realize the dictionary was too hard to write, and go back to farming.
No, they didn't.
They burst out, creating languages of their own, becoming more and more secluded.
Yes.
The realization of their unspoken separation actively poisoned their society. It drove them into ultimate isolation.
The realization itself was the catalyst for their dispersion.
Right.
Once they saw the profound, unbridgeable gaps between their inner realities, they could no longer pretend to be a unified whole.
So they retreated.
They retreated. They built walls around their own specific, narrow understandings of the world, creating smaller, secluded factions where they felt their definitions were safe, validated, and uncontested.
And we see that behavior everywhere today.
Oh, absolutely.
When people realize they can't agree on the fundamental definitions of reality in the public square, they don't stick around to negotiate.
They don't have the energy.
No. They retreat into secluded digital spaces. They curate their social media feeds to only include people who speak their highly specific in-group dialect.
We isolate ourselves in echo chambers to avoid the sheer exhaustion and pain of dealing with that unspoken separation.
To encapsulate this unavoidable collapse into isolation, One Nate introduces a really striking closing metaphor.
It's my favorite part of the paper.
Explaining the failure, the author writes, the poison was already on their palate, and when they stuck their tongue to it, it spilled and they ingested it.
It's brilliant.
Okay, that is an incredibly visceral image. The poison was already on their palate. But I'm actually a bit lost on the mechanics of that metaphor.
Okay, let's break it down.
If the goal was just to write a dictionary, where exactly is this poison coming from? What does the poison represent?
The poison represents the inherent isolation of the human condition.
The inherent isolation.
Right. It is the fundamental inability of any human being to ever fully, perfectly transmit the exact contents of their mind into the mind of another.
We are, by nature, trapped within our own subjective experiences.
Exactly. That isolation, that poison, was always sitting there, dormant, on their palate.
Just waiting.
They hadn't tasted it yet because they hadn't attempted to speak with absolute divine precision.
I see. So the moment they tried to define the sacred dictionary, The moment they tried to force language to be a perfect bridge between minds,
Yeah.
they stuck their tongue to the poison.
Yes. The ambition to achieve perfect unity through language was the catalyst that spilled the poison.
Wow.
By trying to force consensus, they ingested the bitter reality that they were fundamentally alone in their own minds.
And that ingestion is what caused the agonizing pain, forcing them to scatter and seclude themselves.
Exactly. And if we go back to the author's initial premise about necessity, the punishment meets the transgression perfectly.
Because the transgression was the arrogant belief that they could eradicate human difference and subjectivity through a forced universal language.
And the necessary logical punishment was the sudden, overwhelming realization of just how insurmountable those human differences really were.
It's brilliant.
The breakdown of communication wasn't a divine intervention altering their vocal cords. It was the natural life cycle of a flawed premise.
It is the ultimate tragedy of shared meaning, really.
It is.
We reach out to connect with other people. We use words to try and build bridges to someone else's mind. But if we demand that the bridge be absolutely flawless, if we demand that you understand my words exactly as I feel them, the bridge collapses.
Every single time.
We fall back into our isolated territories. The realization hits that my experience of the color red might not be your red.
Right.
My understanding of love or fairness or truth is permanently tinted by a lifetime of experiences you simply haven't had.
And viewing the Babel narrative through this lens shifts the thematic weight entirely.
It completely reframes it.
It strips away the theology of a jealous God swatting down a human architectural achievement. Instead, it offers a profound psychological and sociological observation about the absolute limits of communication.
The failure of the tower was built into the blueprint from day one.
From day one, you cannot build a structure to the heavens out of a shared dictionary, because a dictionary is merely a fragile consensus.
And the harder you push on that consensus, the more it splinters.
Always.
Forcing total unity necessarily produces hyperfragmentation.
When you demand that a complex, diverse group of people conform to a single, rigid linguistic structure, rebellion and division are the biological and sociological necessities.
People will inevitably bump up against the limits of that forced language.
And when they find that the universal words don't adequately describe their personal reality, the resulting friction will inevitably drive them apart.
So to summarize the journey we've been on with this June 2026 paper,
Let's pull it all together.
the Tower of Babel wasn't a building that fell over. There were no crushed bricks or abandoned scaffolding.
No construction sites.
It was a catastrophic breakdown in shared meaning. The builders' quest for a universal language didn't unite humanity. It acted as a mirror.
A very harsh mirror.
Yeah, forcing them to look at each other and realize how vastly far apart their internal realities truly were.
Exactly.
The shock of that realization, tasting the poison of their own inherent isolation, drove them away from each other and into deep, fractured seclusion.
It serves as a stunning diagnostic tool for our current reality.
It really does.
It challenges us to examine our own modern attempts to force ideological and linguistic unity.
Right.
We have to ask ourselves whether our demand that everyone speak the exact same way is inadvertently building new towers of Babel, destined to end in further misunderstandings and deeper social isolation.
It really is a profound way to look at the world. For you listening, I hope this deep dive provides a new perspective on why modern communication, especially in a hyper-connected world, can feel so incredibly fraught.
It explains so much of our current friction.
It does. It explains why the harder society pushes for everyone to be on the exact same page, the more we seem to stumble into polarization and secluded echo chambers.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that people are acting in bad faith. It's that we are all carrying around distinctly different internal dictionaries, and the pressure to pretend we aren't is tearing the social fabric apart.
Language should be viewed as a tool for navigation, a way to roughly chart the waters between two minds, rather than a mechanism for total control and absolute precision.
That distinction changes everything. And it leaves us with one final, lingering thought for you to carry into your next difficult conversation.
What's that?
If the ambitious attempt to build a single universal dictionary inevitably led to total isolation and misunderstanding at Babel, perhaps true human connection doesn't come from forcing everyone to use the exact same words.
Oh, that's good.
Maybe true connection requires accepting that our inner dictionaries will always be slightly different and committing instead to the hard, messy, everyday work of constantly translating each other's distinct realities.